Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let me show you how to troubleshoot problems with AutoCorrect on your iPhone. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. Now we've all encountered a situation where we're typing on our iPhone or our iPad and AutoCorrect changes a word we're typing to something else. This can happen if you've misspelled the original word and it autocorrects to a different word entirely. But it could also happen if you're typing an unusual word or an uncommon name. So as an example here I'm going to use the Messages app since this is where it seems to happen the most because you're typing really quick messages to send to people. So let's start by typing somebody's name and it's going to be an unusual spelling. And you see here that if I were to go to the next word, say by typing a space, it's going to autocorrect it to a different spelling of the name Madison. But I want that original spelling. I spelled it correctly. So what's the right thing to do here? Well, notice at the top here you've got these choices. This is the Predictive Text Bar here at the top of the keyboard. And I'll show you in a minute how to turn this on or off. So if you don't see it, you'll be able to turn it on. Here on the left you're always going to see exactly what you're typing in quotes. This means that if you tap this, it will use exactly what you typed. That's what the quotes mean. They mean use this exactly. Then you're going to see suggestions. You're going to see two of them here. Now if one of them, like this one, is highlighted, this means it's going to replace what you've typed with this if you simply hit the space bar, a period, or anything to indicate you're finished with the word. If this is not highlighted, it means it's a suggestion, but if you were to type space, it would keep the word exactly as you spelled it. So in this case, our main choice is to tap here to keep that word. Here's another example. Here's an uncommon spelling for a common name. And you can see it's going to replace that here with this word. I can tell that because it's highlighted. So if instead I just tap here, it will keep that spelling and actually give me a space so that I've moved on to the next word. And here's another example. And you can see here it's going to try to autocorrect this to this right here. I don't want that, so I'm going to tap this. Now let's try it again. Notice the second time it's smart enough to say maybe you don't want this. One time at least you rejected the suggested word. So it's going to leave it there if I hit space. Now the question is, will it ever actually suggest the right word? So let's try that. Let's try typing this again. And you can see it's still not suggesting the correct word. But it's not going to auto replace it. Let's try typing it again. And you can see there when I get to almost the last letter, it does actually now recognize that as a name and give me a suggestion. So it's gone all the way from not recognizing the name at all to now actually suggesting it. And as a matter of fact, going to use it in AutoCorrect here. If I were to continue with a space, you could see it would do that. And it even knows to capitalize it because I've capitalized it before, so it must be a name. Now let's try another example. Let's say I want to type this. It doesn't have a suggestion there. So I'm just going to use the space like that. And watch what happens when I type it a second time. And then a third time. You can see now it's actually suggesting it. And now it's actually suggesting it and it's going to use it as part of AutoCorrect. Now what happens if I realize I made a mistake and actually there should only be one N at the end of this name? Well, look what happens here. If I just type one N, it's going to replace that with this. It's highlighted. So now how do I type that word with one N? If I hit the space bar, I get the two N's. I could of course backspace twice now and remove that last N. But how do I avoid having this even happen? So let's type it again. And what I want to do is select it here this time. Now you can see that when I type just the one N, it will suggest the two N's. But now it's not going to automatically replace it. So hitting a space isn't going to be a problem. Let's try this. And you can see here it doesn't have this name in its dictionary. It will allow me to type it though and won't auto replace it. Let's type it again and a third time. Now let's start typing a fourth time. You can see it actually appears here as a suggestion at this point. And now if I keep doing it, you can see now how it appears as an auto replacement. If I were to type space now, it would actually add those two E's. And even one more E, it's still going to do it. So now I can type space and you can see it does that. But what happens if I do want to type that name at some point with one E? Well, the one thing I could do is I could let it autocorrect and then backspace, or I can tap here. And the first time I do that, now it's going to recognize that maybe sometimes I don't want the two E's and it's going to change its behavior. So you can see it's still here going to suggest the 2E version, but it's not going to autocorrect it. It will let me hit the space and use the 1E version. So the important thing to realize is that autocorrection on the iPhone is not straightforward. It's not a simple dictionary of words and it's adding words to it and then looking them up. It's looking at lots of different things. It's looking at context, whether it's the beginning of the sentence, the end of the sentence, what words are around it, which app you're using, and what type of thing that you're writing. It's looking at all the times you've spelled the word this way as opposed to similar words. It's looking at how many times you've done them and how recently you've done them. It's looking at when you've corrected the word by going back or going into the word and then changing a letter. So it's taking a lot of different data. So your experience in changing a word is going to be different than these examples. But the basic technique is to type the word the way you want it typed. Tap on the words with quotes in the predictive text bar and then do that a few times until it behaves the way that you want. And if it does autocorrect and get it wrong, then backspace or go back and change the word, and it's going to learn a little bit from that. But every time you let it go and use the autocorrected word even though it's wrong, you're also training it that you want that autocorrection to be made. Now if you don't see this predictive text bar here at the top, the way to get it is to go into the Settings app. You can do that really quickly here right from the keyboard by tapping and holding right here and then going to Keyboard Settings. That's going to take you into the Settings app right into Keyboards. The way to find it in the Settings app is in Settings go to General and then Keyboard. And then in here the predictive text is right there. If I were to turn it off and then go back in, you can see it disappears. So you're going to want to make sure you have that turned on. With it off, if you type something, then you're going to get the old-fashioned kind of bubbles at the top here. And the only thing you can do there is either use the space to accept the word or tap the X there to reject it. By rejecting a few times, you can actually teach your iPhone to not use that autocorrection. But you have to remember to reject it. You can't just ignore it. It'll also learn if you backspace and go back and manually correct the word. But using the X is the best way to do it. Now you can also turn off autocorrection right here. And then you'll never see autocorrection. It may suggest something, but it's never going to be highlighted. Now there is a workaround for teaching your iPhone specific words. So if here in the Settings General Keyboards section you go to Text Replacement. These are text replacements which are handy for a whole bunch of things. If you add a new one, you get to pick a phrase and a shortcut. So for the phrase, you want to use the actual real word as you want it to appear in anything that you type. Like that. Now for the shortcut, what you want to do is use whatever you are accidentally typing, like that. Now this replacement will override any autocorrection. And anytime you mistype the word as this, it's going to automatically replace it with that. You've created your own autocorrection here with these two words. But another thing you do is type both exactly the same way. I don't see this mentioned many places, but if you try it you'll find that autocorrection gets a lot better with this word. It recognizes it as something you may want to type and it's not going to try to change it to something else. So for particularly troublesome words that you're typing correctly but autocorrection is always getting in the way, just simply put the same word as the phrase and the shortcut and add it here and you won't have that trouble with that word again. Now I know some people are going to ask if there's any way to completely reset all of the predictive text and autocorrection and all of that. So it's just like you have a new iPhone. There's no way to delete an individual word or to go in and edit it, but you can reset it so it's just like you've never really typed anything on your iPhone before at all. What you want to do for that is go into Settings and then General. And then all the way at the bottom of General you have Transfer or Reset iPhone. That sounds a bit scary. And what's even scarier is tapping this Reset button. But if you do it, you're actually going to get a list of options here. That includes some scary stuff like resetting all settings. But one of those is actually just to reset the keyboard dictionary. And that'll erase all that information that's used by AutoCorrect. It'll be like you are using your iPhone for the first time when typing text and getting those autocorrections and predictive text suggestions. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.